She's engaged in all client tax advisory services in the firm, as well as litigation. She also has a Master of Laws in Tax Law, Policy and Practice from the University of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we welcome our second panel member, Dr. Nana Jamra Afo. Please, men, don't go away. This is not a ladies' affair. Ladies, thank you so much for honoring my invitation. I'm really, really grateful. You are welcome to St. Ignatius of Loyola. I just want us to start. Belinda, I know you are an expert in land and property. Now, there are so many issues concerning land. Sometimes, well, I had my uncle who was in the US for a long time thinking that he had a land. He came back, he did not have the land. The money he brought for our family members to build, they did not do it. So I just want to know, how can someone have rights in land and how can one acquire land?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me this morning. I'm grateful to be here. As my friend and sister has rightly said, I handle a lot of land transactions, and it's a daily issue of fighting from one court to the other. So it's a really big challenge when it comes to issues of acquiring land in Ghana. And it's important that you acquire the land devoid of any issues. Otherwise, you'd be running from one court to the other for so many years. Land litigation, it can take you just at the high court for 5 years before you move to the appellate courts for another 2 years at least, and some end up at the Supreme Court. So for land litigation, you are looking at about, give yourself at least 10 years. If you don't acquire the land properly, if you don't follow the right procedure to acquire the land, you'd be running from court to court. So you can imagine the expenditure, your time, and it can be really frustrating. So how do you acquire land properly to avoid all this back and forth? The right place to go is the Lands Commission. Before you acquire land in Ghana, you need to conduct your search. You need to conduct what they call due diligence. So you have to get a side plan covering the land, and then you go to the Lands Commission and conduct an official search. The official search will show you the transactions on the land. The search will let you know that the land is available for you to buy, or the search will tell you that the person I am buying the land from is the legitimate person who can sell that land to me, so that I can avoid any issues when I am acquiring land. The second important step you need to take is to go to the land physically. Check the land and see what is on the land, who is on the land. There are times where you go onto the land, you see that there's a fence wall around the land, or you see that there are some structures not permanent in nature. You probably see some temporary structures on the land. You need to find out who has put up the fence wall. You need to find out who has put you on the land, because it is very, very important. Aside the Lands Commission search, who is on the land or what is on the land is also very important. And then probably the neighbors are surrounding the land. Because these days it's difficult to find land that has nothing on it. Most of the lands you probably find some temporary structures, you probably find a fence wall. In few cases you might find that it's virgin land or there's nothing on it. So you need to find out who is on the land. Is the person on the land the one selling to you, or the one selling to you has put that person on the land? Because people acquire lands and place caretakers on the land to watch over the land for them. So once you make those inquiries, it will at least help you to avoid the court litigations and all that.
Doc, just as our counsel has spoken, you know, there are times that in the news or in court, you hear that this is a family land, this is maybe a land that belongs to this traditional area and stuff like that. what are some of the interests in land? And if you are going to acquire land, how do you go about it?
Thank you. So I'm going to mix the English and the Twi so that those of us who cannot appreciate the English can understand. Nti me meka Twi me seniors ne beka English se ne be ya obia benya ntiase. De me senior kan initially ne ye se wo pese wo to asase a asase to enti se tomatoes to nti wuntimi nkonya table so no anka se o ma me ye sen na ne dia no na wato. I was say, oh yes, search, bibi or can bibi say due diligence. Uye nshishemu na obeye no lands commission na obekwa akoye sa nshishemu no. Wachechemu say, ukọ lands commission ebe kire o nipa kra asase ne ye ne dia. Na afen so wudi wani akwa akọhwe asase na wo to no. Se wudru wa eto da abon se bi a kiosk bi si so anase uncompleted building bi esi so. Bi se nipa no se mpacho wo asase no hwan dia. Unim say your chroma so the free information they are easy to get. Ubon say, Mammy be crow ton, cocoa, baby crab, oh, way, contractor bidia, a wobemu who send the bacona or tomano, a yenidia, and I say yenidia. Missina Bisa said, Toda, who quack or to assassin, if you are near Busian sassy, and I say, community for a chief. And Obisa say, how do we get this interest? Asase ye abusuan asase a nipa baako entimi nton mawo. Enti se wo kwoto asase ne ye ka cho se bia o we ye teshifo asase a. E wo se wo hwehwe ehu se nipa na ode asase ne ma no one on na ye abusuan panyin. So ye abusuan panyin a ode ma wa adansefo na e wo ho no, omo ye principal members of the family. Omo di ntintima e wo abusuan nim. Enye sa se abusuapanyi kra de ma na ne baba ma be san ma wa obi fufuro be ba be ka kire wo se asase no ni tumi se obeden obeton e de ama sa nso na asase ne ye ahenie asase a e ye ohene e na betumi e de sa asase no e de ama nti se wo kwoto asase na nipa ne ka kire se ye abusuan asase a make sure se abusuapanyi wo ho Accra has problems e wo ha ne se especially Teshi side no. Ebi wo ha na ya about 7 families na wo say omo omo dia. Within the 7 families no one person wo ha ebi a ya designating say wo na wo da asase eton wa no. Always look for that person. Your due diligence and Pacho your due diligence and yes ati send your kind no. Ubet me asate asase woman so ubewu di obeba bedi wa ade ne so beba bewu na moda ho te court me pa cho.
Thank you very much. I think they've spoken about how to conduct a search to ensure that the land even belongs to the person who claims to sell it to you. Now, I want to find out from our lawyers, what are some of the documents that you would need to be a proper owner of a land?
Yes, so first of all, your primary document to show that you are the owner of a piece of land is what they call an indenture. So an indenture would set out who owns the land, who is selling it to who, what are the conditions for the sale of the land. The indenture would let you know whether the land is being leased to you for a period of time. If it's for a 50-year lease, if it's for a 99-year lease, your indenture would capture all that information. If the land is being conveyed to you forever, what they call the freehold, the indenture would capture all that information. The indenture would capture information as to the head of family signing and being witnessed by the principal members of the family, or if it is a chief, it will capture the name and signature of the chief, and then the principal elder signing with him as witnesses. It will also capture information as to you, the person buying the land, your information, your name, your signature, and that of your witnesses. And then one most important document that is attached to every indenture is the side plan covering the land. So every indenture must come with a side plan that would show the size of the land, the demarcation of the land. And so if you have such a document, it is evidence of your interest in the land. And that is the first step before you proceed to register the land at the Lands Commission, and then you can get a land title certificate over the land.
A follow-up question. So if I have the indenture, someone has the land certificate. You know that I know you've been encountering a lot of difficulties when it comes to that. Because who will be the Nipane say, hey, as I see where you're media, where you say you're media, where you see me were indenture, where you say me were land certificate. How do we go about it, Doctor?
Okay. And just like Miss Senior Kaino, or see our people be a friend indenture betray will say, assassin no unye fi yemfani sebia afo family ho. Omonso ebia kwan omofas ye obi be a friend root of title nti betray kwan afo for ni nya asase no na eventually omode amount ti se ne okan no emfie dodo sen ne de amount sometimes no eya ye koto asase ye misa sa questions we ye assume say o to asase o titi na bia 99 years and say what okra no entisa etoda na bia nipa kro no de na o ton amount no ni interest akamu ye bia 30 years nti eno na o ton amount Sebi, adi anya wo dia no untimi nton more than 30 years mawo. Enti ni nyina ya questions e wo se wo bisa. Me pa acho asase na ya wo dia. Aka mfie sen wo so ansa na asase wurafo na yeden. Aba abaji. These are all questions e wo se wo bisa. Indenture, mi si na bisa question bi se. Obi wo na okita indenture, obi nso se mi kita land title. Dia tie ni se. Unya indenture ni wi a it was all called perfecting or title no. It was all called land commission now koye. Obi wa onya land indenture ni wi a no atiada onko bio. Sa asase no no so a onko ye so hwe na asase ne da ho. Enti obi nso aton ama nipa foforo na nipa foforo no nso di America ekokoye registration na. Onu ne first in time, onu na akwa register, nti onu ne kita land title to we assassin into indenture no aye paper in the kita na fa atomanso na wo some court na court determine say e wo say na eba empempi no ne esi ni say e wo say we vigilant say wo to asase a court no nso so ensemfo so utena wa na obi efa wo right a enya afi na abeba abeka che court say court obi afam right into wo say wo to asase a take steps say one say unyan register kra take possession of the land. Ways I will take possession of the land if say obe fence o asase no. Ube si ebi adan kitwa bi ewo so. Se na ebe ya obi ba obe hu sa asase no ewo obi.
Madam Asibebre. Pacho mo nsem mo em say omo ya ade omo ya ade papa. There's this question obi busa me and na me pese ye discussing. Some time back or say or na government say sa land ni nyina oba befa. Now can the government compulsorily acquire a land?
Yes, so what we have to understand is that for government compulsorily acquired lands, you can go onto the land, you can even be on the land for 50 years. But if one day the government wakes up and says that we want our land, they can move you away from the land and take it. So this compared to somebody who is not the government, has acquired a piece of land and left it, hasn't done anything on the land, or probably has even just put a small fence wall and traveled outside the country maybe for 20 years. And then somebody else comes onto the land, develops the land, is on the land for probably 15 years, and nobody has come to question the person that this is not your land. Why are you on it? Why are you building on it? Why are you dealing with the land? The effect of compulsory acquisition in relation to possession is that the possession does not extinguish the rights of the government. At any time, the government can still take the land, even if you come onto the land, you even build a structure on it, a permanent structure, a temporary structure, the government at any time would take its land. But if it's an individual acquired land, and as my friend rightly explained, you have to do something on the land. You have to take possession. You have to show that you are the owner of the land. If you fail to do that, somebody else who comes to exercise rights over the land for about 12 years, what the law would say, limitation would affect your interest in the land. So even though you have an interest in the land, somebody else would come on it and deal with it, and it would affect your interest on the land. It has the potential of affecting your interest in the land compared to if it's compulsorily acquired land.
I think we are getting the drift here. So you've acquired the land. Wakotna baby bear 15 years. Ore fisa asasi bi kura wo ho. Na se obi ba na obeba no wasidan asiso a. Emra chese sesia no uni interest or land ni mu biom because emra na chill. So that's why we call the adverse possession. She's spoken about it, but I want doctor to also elaborate on it.
Enti sene ye ka no wo de wa ntu kwan wo ti Ghana he bia wo ti teshi ene wa to amasama ya asase ene we ja to wa anye so hwe ene obi ti wo enkan komom di kiosk besi udan so no o ti so nkaka no de o si o boss ma memfa minya ne blog no ama na ye ne blog no ti so wa wo ne manyina gu so for over 12 years wa ankoho wa ma na fa asase ni free nti ukita land title de na so possession no na ye de wa fa nti wuto asase a se obema obi kura atena so a wo de wo ne nka se 10 cities a wo se bosumi bi atua me 10 cities eno no e kire se wo ye de wo ye tenant ba wuja no kura so ontena so a me pa ocho ene wato asase a che ena obisa se etoda wo asase bi a aban se ohia asase no e de aye bibi aban wo ho kwan na emomo betua compensation ena ye de ode ama ye nyina ye nim se ye hia hospitals ye hia state institutions nti se aban ba asase so wo Ghana na aban ni asase nsase ni nyina ye nkonwa asase a na abusuan asase nti se kwaba se aban hia asase a obeba aba besre free ye ho na emomo ba ono no untimi ni aban enya ntokwa nti no ba obeje na emomo betua compensation ena ama o that's it.
The compensation ya patasika. Okay. Last question. Mati hu bi. Ena ya so ye nyina ya so ye hu law no ye hu Land Act no Act 1036 2020. E ka bibi about se woni obi ebia okunu ne oyere. Say bia within the course of your marriage you've acquired a property. Now the law is saying, and I just want us to correct or whatever, let everybody know what the law says, that properties acquired within marriage, if somebody wants to alienate, the person needs the consent of the other spouse.
Yes, so what the Land Act indicates or seeks to explain or seeks to cure is to help couples in marriage. Because there were a lot of situations where land is acquired during marriage, and then one of the parties, or even property is acquired and developed during the course of the marriage. And then one of the parties would go and use the property to take a loan, and is unable to pay off the loan. And then maybe the bank or the financial institution will now come and attach that property. It's probably your matrimonial home. You are living in it with your husband, with your wife. Out of nowhere, some financial institution has come that your husband or wife used the property to take a loan, and so he hasn't been able to pay, and we are coming for the property. So this was the situation that the law is seeking to cure, that in situations like this, you will need the consent of the other spouse before you can use the property as collateral for a loan. And the law presumes that if property is acquired during marriage, it is matrimonial property, it is joint property, until otherwise proven. And so, if you are married to someone and you acquire property during that marriage and you need to use any of the properties for a loan, you need the consent of the other party before you can do that. It's just to safeguard the couples in the marriage so that one party will not be there on your blind side, the other party has taken a loan, you are sitting there one hot afternoon, then the bankers have come, they've attacked the property, move out, and then the children are displaced and everybody is affected. So the Land Act seeks to help the couples in their marriage that if for any reason you need to use the property that is acquired during the course of the marriage for anything whatsoever, you will need the consent of the other spouse to be able to do that. If that is not done and an issue comes up, the spouse who did not give their consent can challenge the transaction that I didn't give my consent, I wasn't even aware of it. And so for that reason, the family will be protected, the other party too will be protected.
Okay, the can say, Etoda awari muno, obani okunu enya ejapade. Emrani susu say, mawari namu eto ejapade eye awari ejapade. Enti say yemfa ne say obano epese oton ema obia. Ohia say obeji ni kunu no consent ansana waton. Sansu na bema ne so kwa akoton a ewo so oje ne consent ansa. Die nti amra ne ti sa ne se ebo awarefo no ho ban etoda obu ana ne ku afa nechi e de akwa akwaji loan wakwa akwaji loan no na wo wa wantua loan no na bank fo na ba se ye ba befa edan na mumienu nyina mu ye de musi ye no enti esi a amra ne se wo kwa akwaji loan na ka kire oyire no nti ase se ye mfa dan no nye de enkoje se we financial institution e was so making sure say oyire no ana okunu no assign say ampa wogitum say omo dan no omo ejapade no yemfa nye collateral enya sa uba oba no be contest be ma no betimi a contest say me pa cho na minim ho hwe edan no so enya ono nko ane dia enti yes a se loan na ode ama na waboka to no aton so a waboka. That's it.
Say ye be jaya my questions ababa obia efa ne questions into ho pese emre na ekọ nti pese yesa eto aso ewo another legal issue which is nsamansew will nsamansew nkrata bia ansa na obewu no obetro ato ho eja wajapade ede ama abusua na most of the time we really don't pay particular attention to wills because not everybody is afraid of death. But today we spoke about All Souls Day. And so whatever it is, as a human being, you will die. And so there's a need for you to make preparation before you pass so that there wouldn't be any conflict in the family. Now, I would like to ask my panel members, why is it so important to make a will?
I cannot overemphasize the importance of making a will because we have seen so much litigation in courts over people's properties when they pass. You will see siblings from the same mother, the same father, they want to literally kill each other over property when one of maybe the parent dies, and it's so appalling. So that is why it is very important for everyone to make a will. It doesn't mean that if you make a will, you are going to die tomorrow. I've had clients who have made a will, so the person make a will, every 2 years they update their will. So they'll make a will this year, the next 2 years they update it, we go and withdraw the one that was deposited. And we have to build the culture of making wills because it resolves a lot of issues that emerge when somebody passes. It resolves a lot of them. So I cannot overemphasize the importance of making a will. Everybody should have one. You don't need to have too much. Just the little you have, you can will it that in my absence, I want it to go to this person. In my absence, I want it to be dealt with in this manner. It resolves a lot of issues. So making a will is very important. Once you start working, you start earning, you have a bank account, make a will. At any point in time, if you want to update it, you can always do that. if you want to revise it or whatever, you can always do that. So it's very, very important for everyone to make a will.
Doctor, before you come in, it's a Women's Month, and so I would like to ask this question. A lot of women always depend on men for wills. So I want to know how important it is for women to also draft their wills. Doctor, I don't know if you can. So maybe you can translate and then continue.
Mepacho, enti ye kan samanse ho asem will. Me de se mi senior kan bibi na me be ka se de bia ma ne de ye nyo ye twa me ekunu num aye ansa na ya will. So oba utimi ye will, be man su timi ye will. Will ni nyina wo kire se wonni wa niema wo pese ye e wo wechi. Enti emfa nse bia wo bone straight wig baako. Wo bia iPhone 16. Wo pese wo kire se mi ni wa me de me iPhone ne ma me baba ma me de wig no e ma me baba. No wa kire musa. Enye sa se wonni wa ebe ye onwanwa se wo baba ma ne baba begina wo se wo pe bone straight no. Na de ntokwa aba. Enti will de ehun hia mesra oba wo ye wula yeye agechire bia no me de ma asumasi ana obentin oba ye will e ma ye independent wo yen kunu no so e na ade a wo de be ye will no e ye wo de o enya mata ade na ade be kwa akoshe o will mu se mata ade wo de iche obi enti de wo de ye will no make sure se e ye wo de a e na oba nso ehun hia se wo be ye will no ye se ne be ya wo ni wa obi o wa ni kunu aye ni kunu ko afterwards no ono de o nya bi no agya wo na nkwala no ebe ya onwanwa se that the same kra no omoko ntokwa wo ho nti mepa mo chew wo hia.
Naomi Debebre said you've spoken about women and, drafting of their wills. Now, many a times when someone passes, and I've seen this happen because of obviously we are in the same profession. Obeka say, "Oh, me papa eja bibi, watro bibi wo ho." Intimate me susu say, "And no na me papa will." But I want to know what are some of the practical steps one needs to take? And this is very important because obi wo kotro baby no watro, obeko lawyer ho, na lawyer agini sika a drafting year man intino. Onye no akotena baby. What are some of the practical steps and what will let everybody know that this is a valid will?
Yeah, so the law sets out some requirements that ought to be met before your will be valid. So you can sit at home and prepare something and say it's a will. And then when you are no more, it will turn out that it didn't meet the requirements of the law, so it's invalid. And most people feel that going to a lawyer to assist you with the drafting of your will is expensive. It's not expensive at all. It's not. You can negotiate with the lawyer. Some can even charge you as low as 3,000 cedis, 2,000 cedis, depending on what you have, 5,000 cedis, and assist you to prepare your will in such a way that it becomes valid in your absence, so that when you are not there, the court will throw it out that it's not valid. Because in making a will, the law would say that it has to be in writing. You need to have at least 2 executors. So the executors here means that people that I trust, that when I am not around, they would be able to gather my properties and share it in the way that I have captured in my will. So you need at least 2 executors. There can be 3, but at least 2 executors. Then we need the beneficiaries of the will. We need the properties that you have, and how you want it to be shared. Some people would even say that I have this 5-bedroom house. I don't want anyone to sell it. I want it to be kept as a family property to be used by all my children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. They want to keep it as a legacy. So how you want your property to be handled, to be managed, is how you would instruct the lawyers to capture it. And then you need at least 2 witnesses. So you sign your will, and it has to be in the presence of at least 2 witnesses. And the law would say that at the same time, so you would sign it in the presence of the 2 witnesses at the same time. You cannot sign your will and then carry it to a friend in the other house and say that, this is my will, witness it for me. The law says that you should sign it in the presence of the 2 witnesses. All you need to do is let them know, this is my will and I need you to witness. They don't have to know what is contained in the will, but they just need to know that this is my will. You sign, and then they countersign to show that everything is valid. And so these are the foundation or the basic things that you need in able to prepare a valid will.
A follow-up question before Doctor comes in. I don't know if this case, Poku Transport, remember that case that we are? Yeah. And most of the time, people contest a will because they believe that maybe the person is of unsound mind, or the person is blind, or anything of that sort. Is there in the law something to protect those who are, physically challenged or whatever in drafting their will?
Yeah, so your capacity to prepare a will is very important. And so the law would say that you should be of sound mind and ability, capacity. We've seen situations where somebody's on their dying bed, they are not even sane. And then the family or the children will just draft something and rush the person and put their hand and sign. That such a will will be invalid because the person is not sane. The person is not mentally capable to be able to execute the will. So in situations like that, such a will will be invalid. We have situations where the issues of rivals. One of the wives is not living with the man. The one who is living with the man, you prepare some fictitious documents. The person is not well. Then they force the person's hand to sign such a will. In situations like that, the will can be challenged in court and it will be invalidated. If it shows that the person was of unsound mind, the person was sick in such a situation where they cannot properly be expected to execute a will, but such a will has popped up. So issues of fraud, issues of insanity, all those factors can invalidate a will. So you need to be in the capacity to be able to execute a will. So that is very fundamental as well.
Inti the can say, Obi already 18 years and above, be a bit me a will. Name will now, no. I was so you be a Adiana Oyen, Otias, Uti legal implication of the Woyen into be a nadrin a year Juma. Say, Sebi, nadrin cry anywhere. Time now, all your will no. Say, Nana dream mudawa. A okay, say, obey a will no. Say, will be a nadrin anywhere to say, or cheche muno, or yarida or no, won't mean kekano, no, akoye paper be abasel on tom printed. At that point, will a voluntary, one out free whoopem, a will be in show. And it's all quiet paper, bremis and infamy cockromutin siswa, and your voluntary wash me, semenye, mean to mean cassa, a dear proud by mean to mean kind. Semi what dear, and Rana said, I was a walking kind at the corona watcher or abremino, mameti, nameka sampa, matidia watcher or abreminase, and sana made him inside, ashas ye. Now dance Fonso Edia dance yes ampa Miana me sign it is any your kind. Yes, sir. Me sign we are. Now me the paper nama now they are come obi ojo no so assign. Now we witness back also we be at tema no so dia ye sa. Time I may sign no. I was any pa me nu ni nyina mugina o na mu se me sign. E na ye ka bibi se I was a will no I was in writing. Enti I was a wo tro. Na wo pe nkrofo a wo gitu mu se nkrofo we de o mbetimi ahwe ma no asem ya ma kyero no me gitu mu se o mbetimi aye no se ne me pese o moye no na e na nkrofo nso a wo pese ejapade no ko mo no kiremu ebi a wo 4 apartments kiremu se me pese akosua me di A apartment A ma no me di apartment B na akoka ne se me de medan ne ma me ma ebi a wo ma ye 4 apartment ne 4 se me de apartment no e ma me ma na deɛ bɛsi ni sɛ bi a na akosua pɛ ground floor ya nso pɛ ground floor ɛno nso kora timi deɛ ɔha ɔba enti kyerɛkyerɛ mu ebi am de ground floor first one ɛma akosua mede wei ama wei wowie a na afei obi adi adanse yɛaka adansedie no na afei yɛakyerɛ mu sɛ okay sɛ esi a meyɛ me will no na mewɔ ɛdan 4 enti 4 no ebi a sɛ ɛkyerɛ mi timi yɛ bi ka ho na ma mɛsesa me will no deɛ a deɛ aka bi a mede ma asomasi anaa ɔbɛnti nti deɛ wopɛ ɛna wobɛyɛ no wɔ will no mu deɛ ɛyɛ ne sɛ sɛ wonni hɔ a esiesie wɔ akyi sɛnea ɛbɛyɛ amanso biara ɛmma.
I've seen, well, my family. So, my uncle, his dad passed. And in the will, the dad bequeathed everything he had to his niece. He had little children, but he bequeathed everything he had to his niece. In a situation where a man or a spouse dies and bequeaths all his property, or the man has children and a wife, but he bequeaths all his property to maybe a niece or a family member, can the law come in to give a reasonable provision to maybe the spouse or the child?
Yeah, so, as much as you have the free will to dispose your property as you wish, it has to be done in accordance with the law. So the Constitution is there, which tries to protect the rights of children, the rights of spouses. The Children's Act is there as well, which protects the rights of children and spouses. So if for any reason you are having issues with your spouse and the children, and you decide that I'm not going to leave anything for them, and the children are minors, which means that they are under the age of 18, the law would step in to take a portion of your estate to make provision for the children because they are minors. The law would do that. It is to cater for the children because they are in a situation where they cannot be a burden on the state. So a portion of your estate will be taken to cater for the children if they are minors. So that's what the Constitution will say, that reasonable provision ought to be made to take care of the children of the married. The same as your spouse. You are having an issue with your husband or your wife, and you vow that I'm not leaving anything for them. The law, in the same vein, would make reasonable provision for your spouse. So probably it might be in your best interest to make provision for your spouse. That is within your determination. Otherwise, the law would step in, look at the extent of your estate, and provision would be made to cater for your spouse as well, depending on the situation of your spouse. If your spouse is financially incapable, cannot cater for themselves, the law would step in to make reasonable provision for them. So to avoid all this, it's good you know that if I don't make provision for my minor children, if I don't make provision for my spouse, the law will step in to do that. So I don't want the law to use its discretion to take what I wouldn't want to give. So let me make provision for the children because they are minors, and the same for the spouse.
Deɛ yɛka ne sɛ yɛmfa ne sɛ bɛrima ayɛ will na will no wɔde ne nyinaa ne agyapadeɛ nyinaa agya ne wɔfa ase a what happens to ne ma nketenkete na ɔmo ɛwɔ hɔ nkwadaa nketewa ne yɛka ho na gye sɛ below 18 nyɛ mo a mo anyinyi na mo abɔ mo bra ɛneɛ wɔama wo a wɔama wo ɔno ane deɛ ɔse kɔpɛ wo deɛ nketewa ne deɛ mmara no protect wɔn interest enti yɛbɛtumi akɔ court na court na ankasa make order no wa make provisions for nkwalaa no ɛne ne yere no nanso yɛnhwɛ biribi te sɛ ne yɛka na mmaa na wɔse yɛn nso yɛyɛ will because deɛ ɔde maayɛ no sɛ wowɔ interest wɔ mu deɛ a yɛbɛtumi atwe ma nso na woanya wo kyɛfa wɔ mu na mmom sɛ yɛ ɔno ne deɛ a ɛne deɛ ɔde bɛma no no ɛna ɔde bɛma no enti ɛyɛ better sɛ woyɛ wo will a hu sɛ okay me yere me man biribi kakra mema me manketo ane su kakra emfa oba ne ho ahi ana se nura bi usuma akra na wa anko no na se mema no wa ma na emra will make provisions for the little ones and pay for no mon kan me that's
Hello. Ti we a follow up question. Enti sebe nipa ne ko wa anya wo emra emma kwan ma bibisa se nipa na anya wo la bibisa wo ho emra ya siesie ma sa nipa na na
me pa cho se nipa no wa anya wo ye kan nyina wo de wo se wo mfa still na ne obeya na obeye nyame ampata wa fra wo se bra wajapa de nse wo se wo nche ne se ne ope se wo che no no emra be che ne se ne ope e de ama wo enti ye behwe se wo yire a e na wo ma di odi wa de e wa busuem se o ma me no papa ti ase a emra no be make provisions for na hwe bibi o ma na bia no mususa enti ye be ma enkwala no se o ma yesesa sis ni nyina so osua so ye panyi obeba baji be ku aka ye o wel nso aka de be ma nketwa no enti emra no PNDC law e make provisions first no nanka se obi wu no anja wel bia ne ya be pa mo ma na firifie enkwala no kra nso ye nsan hwe yen di odi ade no no wa huhuru no abetena won kope ne de no abeje obi de de aboso ye hwe ya na ehu se da bia sisie ya abam enti e wo se e bo awarefo no ho eban de ye kan enye mma nko na e favor mo be ma ne nso be den onu nso se ne yiri ewu a na wa anya wola be ma ne nso nti afa wuti wa na abusiafo na ni ahahan se ye nua ba ne wu ye ni kuna afa na japade nyina tunefo no anya wo me da ase.
Thank you. Oh, ye monsem ene yesua ade pa. I would like to use this opportunity to thank our sponsors. Yewo ye nuanom bi wa sorry ha omo so mai iska kakra se ye mfanye program we omo se ma me mo mudi baby omo wo bia nyame isra omo bebre. Now we go to domestic violence. You also say our enum sometimes and to kwane niema ne sa niema ni nyina doso enti abaya hu se wo se ye mra na ye protecting obia na we de memfa asresem bi emfam kakra me called off me drew na papa bi wo ho papa bi aba oba no hu police ni ba ko no gina ne nche na me gina ho e na osme pa ucho o e ya na me yere bo mi wo fie pa in fact oba cross madam fu bi na yere bo no no papa e ye wo na wo yere bo aka no kra ne kire ye no say okay no kra de e ye ba ko me yere ebo me pa na me pa cho e no ye domestic violence na because me your be man ti me nim enu nti na me de aba ha no eti who said some of these things are happening. Some of these things are happening and we need to talk about it. Thankfully, there is a law that protects victims. And so we want us to delve deep into domestic violence. We have the Domestic Violence Act. Now I want to find out from my learned friends, what constitutes domestic violence?
Yes, so as my sister rightly indicated, there's the Domestic Violence Act that seeks to protect people in a domestic relationship. And so domestic violence would simply be violence meted out in a domestic setting, in a domestic relationships. So relationships of husband and wife, relationships of boyfriend and girlfriend, relationship of house help and father of the home, relationship of uncles with nieces, relationship of even people who have divorced, but people have divorced their children and there's, violence, threat of harm caused to the parties. The harm can be physical, it can be financial. So the man is providing for the family and he's having issues with the wife, and so he deprives the family of that financial assistance and is threatening the spouse. That is domestic violence. Issues of emotional abuse. Sometimes somebody will just emotionally, psychologically, they are not beating you, but what they are taking you through is affecting you psychologically, emotionally, subjecting you to some form of harm, the law would say that that would constitute domestic violence. Sexual, assault, sex in a very degrading manner, in a very abusive manner. People have contracted venereal diseases and in a way to harm the other party, they would subject them or transmit those kind of diseases to the other party. The law would consider that to be domestic violence. Violence meted out in the domestic setting, in the family setting. So in simple terms, domestic violence can be seen in all these.
Dr. Nana, before you come in, let me just a follow-up question to Ms. Puama. So somebody can say that, oh, I just hit her once. I just hit her once. Can that amount to domestic violence?
It will amount to domestic violence. It does not matter how many times. At least once is enough to constitute domestic violence. You don't need to wait for it to happen repeatedly before it can be categorized as domestic violence. Just one is enough. And even the threats alone. So maybe you've not hit the person, but the threats of doing that would be seen as domestic violence. So it doesn't matter whether it's just once, it's enough.
Let's just say, yeah, match up money, cry. Not say it, okay, let's go to doctor.
Okay, but your domestic violence in one sem neka. Adie bi a yemfa nsem wo fie mu. Ebi ana ye bo. Obu ane de ne ye mu no. So nipa betimi atwa abo sa afia no panko obo kura nkeye. Enti so de ne nsa bo wa domestic violence. And o twa bo wa ma wa utumi se wohwe anu wa hwe mu kura o se na me kura nipa se me nka ho. Obu on so a aduane kura o ma obi ni wo fie. O ma wo nko school. Obu on so a o abuse o repi nipa no e wo ho. Enti ade bia ye eye harmful to yen bia e wo ye fie mu. Ebetimi ti se ne ocheche ebetimi aye between ekunu ne eyere. Ebetimi aye papa ne ba ana maame ne ba ebi akola bi amo ne te. Ebetimi abasa oba no na twa bo ne nikunu. Obo ha oni anwode obabu o ma ni bi ya no ya papa. Obetimi atwa bo wanka obo kura nkeye. E na obi so ha ebro. E na obi sa sese obi o se o miku wa bom ba akopɛ. Enye dodo no na hia. So abo ba akokura wa bo. Wadi watem ba akokura wadi watem. Wa rape ba akokura rape. Obi o ha aduane onim se unye adwuma na yire no unye adwuma. Enti osisi wa anye se ya me ma wa aduane. Ana se ne bu afu nti the whole day no all ma chop money mpo no anu aduane. All these things domestic violence me pa cho.
Say mrene konti me busa last question. But legal we dey betimi e besa ye biom. Say the beya because your topics bebre you be discuss but time e call. To me busa one last question on domestic violence. How can the law or how can the community protect victims?
Yeah, so I'll start with the community. Sometimes the person involved or experiencing the domestic violence is so helpless that they can't help themselves. So maybe your husband is the breadwinner, and so you are afraid that if you maybe report the person, you'll not be taken care of, your children will not be taken care of, there are threats and all that. So you are so helpless, you can't help yourself. So the law allows your neighbors, your friends, who see what you are going through to help you. So you are so helpless that you cannot help yourself. Your neighbors are positioned in a place where they can assist you by making a complaint on your behalf. Ordinarily, the law would require that you would go and make a complaint to the police if you are abused in a domestic setting. But if for any reason you are helpless, you are unable to, your friends, your family should be able to help you by making a complaint on your behalf. And the complaint should be made to the police. And there are situations where even your neighbors, they probably chance upon your partner physically abusing you, the law gives them the right to apprehend the person abusing you, what we call to arrest the person. And so your neighbors can arrest the person and take the person to the police to handle it from that point. So the law really makes provision for, the neighbors, the friends, the family, and all that to assist victims of domestic violence. There's even a fund in place to assist the victims if you are financially incapable, maybe to seek any medical help. Once the report is made to the police, the funds will be released to you to assist you to go for medical checkup and all that. So the law really tries to protect victims of domestic violence.
Well, just a follow-up question before Doc comes in. So is there any order from the courts to protect these victims?
Yes, so once the complaint is made to the police and the issue is taken up, investigations are ongoing, an application can be made for what they call interim protection orders. And so as the investigation is ongoing, an application can be made to the court to make provision to protect you for the time being while the investigations are ongoing or while the case is proceeding. The person being accused of perpetrating the domestic violence can be requested to, if they are living in the same house, to move out of the